Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Monica D'Souza and welcome you to the third episode of DigiRupt Finance, Conversations around Digital Innovations in FinTech, hosted by Comviva in association with Your Story. Here we bring together global FinTech leaders to discuss the future of the industry, banking and payments at large. In today's episode, we're going to deep dive into digital payments and its push in the connected world. To set the context, CI Worldwide released a report that indicated more than 70.3 billion real-time payment transactions were processed globally in 2020, a surge of 41% compared to the previous year. There is a rapid shift in how consumers prefer to shop and pay, and this presents a great opportunity to unite merchants, consumers, acquirers, and fintech companies in expanding the adoption of digital payments. Of course, there are numerous challenges like payment downtimes, transaction failures, and more. But on the bright side, a plethora of payment gateway startups have emerged that are addressing these challenges and simplifying payments for merchants. As we go through one of our biggest transformations in financial history, there are numerous questions on our mind. How can tech businesses leverage digital payments as growth levers? How can startups use technology to enable a seamless payment journey for merchants? To answer these questions and more, we have with us a wonderful panel of global industry leaders. I would first like to introduce Pratyush Prasanna, SVP Merchant Payments, Gojek Singapore. Pratyush kicked off a professional career that saw him found several startups, taking up leadership roles in companies like Paytm, Point, Xerox, Microsoft, and eventually work at Gojek. Welcome, Pratyush. We also have Khilan Haria, VP Product Management at Razorpay. Khilan has 10 years of experience across startups and multinationals in driving products from concept to launch. Prior to Razorpay, he has also led product management roles at T-Box, Yahoo, and Taggle.com. Welcome, Khilan. We also have with us Manas Mishra, Chief Product Officer, PayU. Manas has over 2 decades of experience across payments, e-commerce, internet, and IT domains. Prior to PayU, he has led strategic roles in companies like Flipkart, Yahoo, and Media.net. Welcome, Manas. And finally, we have Gunjan Pradhan, Payments Head India and ANZ at Netflix. Gunjan is an online payments evangelist and enthusiast, currently working on Netflix's payment initiatives for India. She has previously worked on payments with startups like Citrus and PayU India. Welcome, Gunjan. Now, exciting session ahead, so let's begin. So let's start with Pratyush. So Gojek started off as a ride-hailing and courier delivery service and has evolved into a unicorn that provides over 20 services today, including food and medicine delivery, shopping, digital wallet, bill payments, etc., to millions of consumers. How has your journey been from primarily a ride-hailing and delivery app to a multi-service super app?
Thanks, Monica. Thanks for having me here as well. Hi, everyone. To answer your question, Monica, I think it has been an evolution in terms of addressing multiple user needs, right? Gojek did start off with ride-hailing, but in the journey, as we encountered multiple pain points that users have, we built a lot of incremental services, right? And at the same time, focusing on like the quality of service for each of those. What we also did was that we built a strong backbone in terms of logistics and driver partners, which is clearly our differentiator in the business, specifically in Indonesia, wherever we do business. One of the key things that I like to talk about Gojek is that it's a company that is actually built on the mission of improving lives of millions of Indonesians, and again, wherever we are. This is a much bigger motivator and helps us kind of strive constantly to be better at what we do. The reason why I mentioned that is because it's like a two-way market that we are building, right? One from the drivers, the service provider point of view, as well as consumers. And we have been lucky enough that we have addressed both sides in the markets that we are in. And hence, the evolution from a ride-hailing to like a super app, as it is called, is not an inorganic one for us. It has grown quite organically, and we will keep on continuing on that journey.
If I could double click a little bit on the digital payment side of the business. So how are digital payments the center of Gojek? And what proportion of payments really comes from digital channels such as GoPay, which is your digital wallet, or card payments compared to say cash? or cash on delivery, which is obviously a big pain point for most merchants? And has the shift from cash to digital helped you with the business viability of the financial services vertical overall?
Yeah. As you rightly said, digital payments are at the kind of core of our business, right? As we build the consumer side, we realize that consumers have their needs and they want to pay easily. So hence the growth on the consumer side in terms of the wallet. But one of the things that is also under the sheets is that we built a very strong merchant business as well, right? To give you a few examples, the largest payment gateway in Indonesia, Mitrans, is a GoTo Financial brand. So I'm telling GoTo Financial because that's what the new brand for Gojek is. As a part of Mitrans, we enable most of the large companies, startups, and many of the brick and mortar companies as well. Similarly, our disbursement engine is also one of the largest, as well as we have a physical store acceptance for cards, which we call as Spots digital business. What we also have done is that we've built a lot of stickiness around this with our software POS business, brands called Gopis and Mocha. With all of these, right, which is digital payments, addressing most non-cash payment methods, and the stickiness built with our products, right? It has helped us go into the financing part of the business and other merchant services very easily, right? To answer your question, a significant part of our, a significant part of our GTV is actually digital payments, and which has seen massive amount of growth during the pandemic as well as most parts of the world. But because of the way that I look at it, we have built a lot of these pillars on which our business has been based, and right now we are in a position that we can leverage on top of these pillars going forward.
Absolutely, this is wonderful to hear. And on top of what is happening in Gojek and of course in Indonesia with GoTo, I would love to bring in Manas now to speak about the other side of the world, which is about actually working with large digital merchants and actually providing services. So Manas, coming to you, PayU is obviously a global payments gateway brand with operations in multiple countries. How has this international experience helped you to evolve your offering, of course, in India and globally? And now that you have bought Wibmo, you have also a strong presence among digital, and you have a strong presence among digital merchants in the country. How do you see this digital payments experience, both on the consumers and the merchant side, with the ease to help really shift the needle from cash to digital?
Hey, thanks, Monica. Thanks for that question. So I'll answer this in two parts, right? First, about the global aspect of PayU. As you rightly pointed out, we actually operate in many different parts of the world. But you'd also understand the payment regulations, the payment experience are really different in different parts of the world, right? So that's why many of our products or many of our platforms that we build are very specific to that market that we operate in. Specifically in India, it's very different from, for example, the US or Europe, right? So we would build something which is very specific to market. But what the global experience does is we have done something very wonderful called a global hub that we have created. So if you are a large merchant who operates in multiple geographies, you just connect with the PayU hub, right? So with that, you for example, get to work with UPI, BNPL in India, you get to experience other wallet products in different parts of the world. So you do just one integration. So we have created a global hub that helps you kind of give this better payment experience across all the markets, right? And second part of working at a global scale is we are constantly, actually, when you're building our products and platforms, we're constantly thinking about, hey, which part of this we can actually separate out and take it to another market, right? That makes us think in terms of our architecture, in terms of our modularity and design. For example, some of the fraud models, some of the acquiring models, that remains common, even if the payment experience might be different, right? So we build it that way that you can actually take one box from here and plug it in somewhere else, right? So that really helps us. And the third aspect of obviously working at a global scale is we get to hear from merchants directly, from large merchants, what are their challenges in different markets and how they're solved in different markets, right? That really gives us insights and helps us make our products better. Right, so that's about your first part of the question about global aspects. Coming to the second part of Wibmo, as you rightly said, so PayU has always been very strong when it comes to the merchant side. And Wibmo is by far the leader in India when it comes to the issuer side of platform, right? So now what that gives us is a very unique opportunity to create end-to-end product experience, because one entity understands the merchants, the acquiring side, the consumers really well. The other entity understands the banks, the issuers, their challenges really well. And so we co-create a lot of the solutions, right? So again, if I just have to pick a couple of examples, we have co-created something called an Express Pay, which is just reducing all the hops, all the redirection from the payment flows, right? If you look at a normal payment flow that we do on an e-commerce site, there are around 7 to 8 redirection you have to go through. We have managed to eliminate almost all of them by creating this great experience. They're building a solution together, right? So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect could be the risk-based authentication, because Wibmo has access to a lot of like all the authentication is done by actually Wibmo access control servers, right? So they have a lot of data, they have a lot of models. So along with PayU and Wibmo, we have created a lot of risk-based authentication models that again helps us eliminate friction in the entire journey of the user, right? So those are like a couple of examples from the top of my head, but I mean, we are different entities, we work in different domains, but when we get together and co-create, that actually creates a lot of beautiful products for the consumers.
Thanks, Manas. This is a great segue in actually understanding the same, but from a merchant point of view, and a merchant that operates globally and is a digital merchant of a very, very large size. So welcome to Gunjan. And Gunjan, the best part about Netflix is, of course, the fact that it's absolutely seamless, both in terms of experience. We absolutely love it. And payments is a very crucial part of it, but almost invisible. So what is this recipe for developing a very seamless, painless experience? And in the Indian parlance, given the advertisements around it, I would love to remind you of that adage, fill it, shut it, forget it. You're never reminded that you're actually paying for your Netflix subscription, and a whole lot.
Thank you, Monica, for having me, and thank you for that question. I don't know if there is a recipe, as you would like to call it, but it's really the relentless thirst to solve for consumer needs in the market that really drives our intent to really be as invisible. And you rightly said, we want to be as much in the background as possible and really allow the customer to enjoy the service for which they've signed up and not be bothered about trying to fix their payment woes. We're always looking for ways to make Netflix more enjoyable and also accessible. So building for seamless experience is therefore really at the heart of product innovation at Netflix. When it comes to payments, it's always a very fine balance, I think, that you need to strike via product between control and convenience. Monica froze a little bit for me, but I'm guessing everyone's still on. So yeah, in terms of payments, it's always about striking a fine balance between control and convenience. And I think what really speaks to consumers is our consistency in espoused and acted value propositions like cancel anytime, which really speaks about our integrity and really in our relentless effort to keep customer interests first. And really from a payments perspective, we are driven by a motto to not be the reason behind a customer signing up and not be the reason causing an involuntary goodbye. So from that perspective, we try and build in solutions and product experiences for our customer that is really true to the motto for Netflix, which is make Netflix more enjoyable.
And Gunjan, it truly is enjoyable. You, like I said, you never really even remember that you paid for it. It's absolutely seamless. And as long as you made the payment, you absolutely never even think about it again. So absolutely wonderful. And time to bring in a very different experience. And of course, Razorpay, when you think about experience, you have to talk about Razorpay. Now, Razorpay, bringing this question to Killer now. Now, Razorpay has really differentiated itself by building this entire ecosystem of both payments as well as value-added services, including payments, pages, payment buttons, payment links, subscriptions, invoicing, and even now credit. So with the current focus on merchants, but SMBs, which are obviously the heart of many countries, digitization and lending, how does this all come together as a proposition for your end customers?
Thanks for hosting me, Monica and the team. The way we've always thought about it is payment gateway has solved for one small payments problem for our customers, businesses in India across different sizes and spectrum. Very early days of a journey, we realized that different merchants, depending on the segment, the size, face different kind of payment problems. And that is where we had to elevate our thinking and solutioning to, position ourselves as a one-stop payment solutions provider. And that gave the birth to many value-added services, starting from, for smaller merchants who don't have a website, they can get a very small form builder in the form of payment pages. For merchants who don't want to, collect needs in real time or money in real time, you can use Payment Link or asynchronous payments. B2B collections, that's virtual accounts, smart collect payment, there's marketplace settlement. So we started looking at different segments of merchants on what kind of needs these folks have and how could we service all of their payments needs. And we were actually asked most of these questions by our customers who were using Payment Gateway early on. That, we're happy with you solving one problem, but we got 5 more payment problems. Could you kind of help us tackle that as well? That's what kind of led birth to some of this innovation. And over time, we realized that more the problem we solve for our merchants in the space of money movement end to end is what gives stickiness to us, is what actually, simplifies money movement for businesses. Regulatory aspect, product technical aspect, failure rates, all of those, kind of simplified in a single one-box solution. That's what gave birth to a lot of these different value-added services, be it lending and be it even payouts and banking now. Vision for us continues to be very simple, that if there is money movement for a business, we want to ensure it's as simple for you as possible, no matter the size of the business you are at.
So Khilan, now that you have such an expanded offering, how do you actually explain to merchants what these offerings are? Because literacy also comes with its own set of problems and challenges, and we are talking about merchants who are not very big merchants. So how does that get? Because I've looked at the Razorpay dashboard myself, extremely simple to use. But when it's extremely simple, we're still appealing to that population which understands at least the basics of financial transactions and how they work. So how do you really solve this challenge?
Yeah, at the heart of this is, the right amount of targeting where product and marketing have to work very smartly to understand what to expose to which merchant at what stage of the journey. Giving every merchant everything at one point in time complicates their life. So a lot of it is to figure out, even when you discover Razorpay as a new business, what do we show to you? Why, at what point, and then, how do we ensure that we help you start your digitization journey? And we kind of want to be behind the scenes again. We are not the front of digitization journey for a lot of these merchants. So a lot of it is, arts and science in marketing, much more than in product, in discoverability. You rightly pointed out, it's not really easy. So we have our strategy where there are anchor products and then there are, products which help merchants go deeper into the digitization journey. So for a new merchant, we'll typically not, pick the complex one, we'll generally pick the anchor product. So out of a bouquet of 20-25 offerings, 5 or 7 act generally as anchor products.
Absolutely. Totally understand. And that is exactly why payments is so complex. While we obviously, all of you do a great job of making it look very less complex, very simple, but it's not that simple. But now coming to the most important question that especially after COVID seems to be hitting the headlines and all for the wrong reasons, which is all the security challenges and obviously form factors and the multitude of challenges that merchants are facing as more and more consumers are taking to digital. So why don't I address this first question to Gunjan here? So Gunjan, the first time payment experience is obviously going to be fraught with a lot of problems. And given how much we have seen of Netflix, it's absolutely painless. So please help us understand the first time experience signing up, renewing the payment subscription, which is normally fraught with challenges, but how have you made this seamless? What was the ethos and thinking behind designing such a great product experience?
I think my previous answer around us trying to solve for a customer need, no matter where we are, is at the heart of everything we do. But it's also very important to understand the history in India, right? India is one of the largest subscription economies globally. Our milk, our laundry, entertainment, gas, water, electricity, they're all provided via subscription models. But the seamless subscription payments and the concept of it being painless is very new to India. So the evolution of consumer behavior, and here I talk about mainly trust, because that is essentially what was missing, and really maybe the factor not allowing for seamlessness to come into subscription payments. And innovation on consumer products is an ongoing state. And in order to reach a state of true seamless payments experiences, we really need to be relentless at that. And so what we try to do, especially with a country like India, is we strive to be more transparent in our consumer communication because we're dealing also with trust. And I say that because other economies have a well-established system of subscription seamless payments. But for India, it's really about striving to be transparent in consumer communication and largely in our dealing of consumer concerns when it comes to driving trust as well as comprehension. Because a lot of drop-offs, I think, also happen at the point where people are not able to understand why are they giving these standing instructions to the merchant. And as when we talk about a global company, we're always looking at ways to make it easy to address those local market needs. So from that point of view, yes, it is challenging. I think payments overall is challenging. Security and all of the challenges that come with it are real. But I think what is even more important is really trying to take the consumer along in that journey and helping them gain trust and establish a consumer behavior by possibly something around trust and clear communication is what we strive to do.
Absolutely. And since Gunjan, you mentioned trust, an important thing is about how consumers form an opinion based on headlines. And right now, obviously, country regulations are changing. They're in the headlines for either right or wrong reasons. We will not debate that. But just wanted to understand, as a global company, how do you manage and deal with local regulations, including additional factors of authentication, for example, in India, or even the challenge of recurring payments, which thankfully now has opened up to both credit and debit cards? And how does that impact your business as an international product, but as a global company, firstly?
I think as a global company, we always have to be open to address local market conditions. And hence, we're building solutions to cater to customers in those local markets. When it comes to challenges, there are always going to be nuances in every market that is going to be very unique to that particular market. So I think we fully understood that if we wanted to do business in India, 2FA was the requirement, and we decided to go ahead. But we've also been able to identify ways of making the sign-up process largely painless and hopefully the recurring process even more painless. And we do this by way of working with the regulator, with the issuing banks in order to comply with the regulations around recurring as well, where, as I was speaking about establishing trust and comprehension, it's all about the timely messages that go out to the customer, informing them about an impending debit. And I think those really help instill that culture of trust. And I think that's very important as we're looking towards capitalizing on the fact that we are a subscription economy, and seamless subscription payments is essentially the way to go.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gunjan. And this is an excellent segue into my next question, which goes to Khilan on just this topic. Now, India has multiple digital payment acceptance methods, whether it is debit cards, credit cards, now UPI, IMPS, NEFT, RTGS, and we can continue to go on and on. How do merchants really not get overwhelmed, especially SMBs who really don't understand the business of payments? How do you cater to making these options both viable, understandable, and still get merchants to actually accept digital payments? That is one hurdle. And the second is obviously for consumers to pay. How do you manage both sides of the business?
Yeah, thanks, Monica. So, I mean, one of the first things we realized very early on is if we have to tackle SME and freelancers, the long tail of India's economy, we will have to ensure that for them, it shouldn't matter whether there are 150 payment options or 25 payment options or 3 payment options. Our suite has to be built in a manner that abstracts the underneath payment method from them. So right now, like, we end up supporting 150 plus payment methods if we count all the net banks and the wallets and all of that. And it really doesn't add any additional layer of complexity to our merchants for two reasons. I think one, of course, the way we build a developer experience meant that even when UPI came, merchants had to literally do zero work and they could go live with UPI the very next day. And all of this was at the heart of our thinking that not every merchant is going to be like a Flipkart or Amazon or a Netflix who can really understand the complexity and then figure out what makes sense for them to how to use it. The other part of it was to build a B2B2C leg of the experience. We are not a direct consumer facing company, but we do believe that smaller businesses in the country could take help from folks like us to use a SaaS solution baked into a product solution, into the payment suite, which helps them collect money and simplifies the complexity of user experience on payment. Because if you don't get the UX on payments right, you will end up creating more drop-off than delighting the users. And that is where, again, the complications of different methods come into play. Which user should be shown which method at what point in time? How do you personalize their experience? How do you ensure that if a user is comfortable in Hindi, you actually show it in Hindi? How do you even know that the user is comfortable in Hindi? So there are a lot of nuances and things which, again, the larger merchants have both the expertise and the bandwidth and the capability to invest their energy into getting it right. But as we go to SMEs and freelancers, it makes sense for someone like us to go and simplify this complexity again. So this is largely how we tackled it, where we've ensured that both the experience of payments for consumers, which is again B2B2C leg for merchants, as well as merchant integration leg, is agnostic of methods. And this means that when we add a new payment method, UPI was an example, and there are new wallets, BNPL, cardless EMI that keep getting added over many months. Merchant literally have to do zero work, and that's what really kind of makes them not even worried about whether there's 150 today, 160 tomorrow, or 200 the day after. As long as my drop off from once the consumer has been convinced to buy my product is as less as it can be.
This is wonderful to hear, but the question that I would have on my mind now, you deal with both kinds of merchants, whether it is really large merchants or it is slightly smaller SMBs, but obviously very critical. So how do you deal with the mindset and of course the offerings difference to both that needs to be made to both these very different segments, and they are facing also slightly different challenges, and you are appealing to both of them. So how do you really manage this dichotomy?
It's a very good question. See, our offerings are different. So if you as a merchant are more sophisticated, where you want to take the control of experience in your hands, then you can definitely do deep integrations in the form of APIs if you are PCI compliant. If you are one category below where you have the expertise but don't have PCI compliance, you can use a custom checkout where you get full flexibility of how your experience looks, but you don't need PCI compliant. The third category is where you neither are PCI compliant nor possibly have the expertise, or believe that people like us are better placed to handle experience, then you give the entire experience to us as well. So we got three different layers of solution depending on the sophistication of the merchants.
Very interesting, Kiran. This is again an amazing panel because it gives me the ability to be able to move from one panelist to the other without even me realizing. So I'll move over to Pratyush now, who's actually helped in the growth and he's bringing merchants on board. So Pratyush, if I can ask this question to you exactly where Kiran has left off. You are operating in multiple Asian countries. You have a different digital payment landscape in all of them. You have different multiple payment instruments and different levels of maturity of those payment instruments in those countries. How do you really internationalize the payment stack while dealing with this massive payment growth in that country?
As Manas mentioned earlier, right? I think each market has its own nuances, and there are payment methods which have significantly large presence in some markets as well as local schemes, right? So it's very difficult to build like a one size fits all solution for specifically different kinds of markets, right? And also the other nuance is what Kiran also pointed out, which is that the customer expectations are also tailored for each geography, right? But what we have done is that from a building point of view, what we have done is we built like a standard backbone for the normal payments like credit card, debit card, bank transfers, which we replicate across geographies. And for specific nuances of each market or specific payment methods, right? We define the flows as we go into a particular market. What it also makes us do is that it also makes us very agile, because we are not only creating experiences in each different market, we're also trying to improve the experience for the markets that we're already present in, right? Just to give you a few specific examples, in Indonesia, there is this concept of virtual accounts, right? Which unlike other countries, drives a lot of our traffic. We've been consistently trying to improve the experience, reducing the time that it takes to pay via virtual accounts for an Indonesian merchant, for an Indonesian consumer on any merchant site, right? This example doesn't exist anywhere else, right? But there are nuances of other examples that we have in other markets. The second thing that we do is that We work very closely with payment methods in specific geographies. Like when we introduced in Singapore, one of the first things we did was to incorporate DBS PayLah, which is one of the biggest or largest used payment methods here. Last but not the least, we also leverage at our backend. We also leverage, the latest and greatest, so to say. So we work with CyberSource, Braintree, NPGS, in order to make sure that we take the best out of these, best out of these in terms of making our transactions more efficient and fast. So yeah, it's not a single solution. It's kind of like a khichdi of many, but it works.
That's why the use case is so complex. People think and look at the payments and they don't understand what goes under the hood. So they think if one payment doesn't work, it's a huge, massive problem. But there is so much that is happening. And you mentioned so many players. Just the players put together itself is huge number of partnerships. So absolutely quite amazing. But Pratyush, the question is really, you're also on the other side as a merchant, you're growing so fast. You're developing things, you're moving into different markets. How do you deal with this entire pace of both scaling up at the same time, not dealing with downtimes, maintenance, maybe even re-platforming? How are you dealing with this entire hegemony of things that are coming together all at the same time?
Yeah, that's actually a good question because, we are in the situation where we obviously have to support the largest merchant, which is Gojek for us, right? But, there is no silver bullet here, right? As simple as that. One of the things, again, as I said, it keeps us honest and it keeps us agile, which is, we keep on experimenting with a lot of different kinds of technologies. For example, when the mandate for 3DS 2.0 came in Indonesia, which is Q4 this year, we were one of the first ones to roll it out, right? And we also monitor what are the best practices in other markets, specifically players like Stripe, Razorpay, PayU, and others in other markets, and try to incorporate that into our solution, right? One thing I wanted to kind of call out here is that when I joined Gojek, when we were laying out our OKRs for the first time, it was for the first time that in business OKRs I saw reliability, which I'd never seen earlier. Like in no org I'd seen reliability as one of the OKRs, right? This also, the reason why that is there is because we still consider ourselves a very technology-led company, and reliability and uptime is one of the non-negotiable metrics that we have, right? And we keep on improving parts of that, in every half that we focused on. But again, system reliability is always a moving target, right? So, we try to address it by a mix of monitoring, reporting, and aggressive solution, and at the same time help the largest merchant, which is Gojek, but cater to other merchants which rely on us for their payments.
So Pratyush, thank you so much for this answer, and I'm very glad that you actually mentioned reliability, because that is something that I would love to deep dive with Manas on. And again, excellent segue to get to talk to Manas exactly about this topic. Now, Manas, you have the unique distinction with PayU being a global leader, and especially in India, with dealing with being a payment solutions provider for very large e-commerce merchants, including both Amazon as well as Flipkart, apart from, of course, all the amazing merchants like Netflix, etc. Now, the question is, how is PayU uniquely not only suited to solve these pain points that we were speaking about, including reliability, but also address the varied needs? Because the needs of these larger merchants is, again, very, very different, and reliability is huge. Given all the sales that are going on, and one of them just finished, would love to hear your perspective.
Sure, thanks, Monica. Great question. So I think whether it's a large merchant like Flipkart, Amazon you mentioned, or SMB, right? So what doesn't change is nobody actually likes to see a transaction failure or drop off, right? So your success rate, your uptime, your reliability is, I think, simple table stakes, right? That is the baseline from where you start. When you work with a large merchants, I think the difference comes in the next stage. And this is something Gunjan mentioned in the first part of our answer, that large merchants are relentless, right? So they feel that, hey, I have solved the basic need. And now let me see how I can optimize, how I can make it better and better for my consumers, right? That's where we actually consider ourselves more of a strategic partner. So we, rather than going as a more of a transaction processor, right? We go and try to understand what is the pain point that we should solve for the merchants, right? And what is out of the box really may not be good enough for them. So you try to figure out what else you can do, right? So that's where you co-create a lot of solutions. And anything that we build, it might ideate from one of the large merchants, but we build it as a platform so that everybody can utilize it, right? So that is one thing which is fundamentally different when you work with the larger merchants. And I think many of the large merchants, and I was also on the other side, as you mentioned in the introduction, large merchants also see payment not just as an enabler of a transaction. Sometimes payments can also be a growth engine, right? So a very classic example is that if you just increase access to credit of your consumer base, right, when it comes to e-commerce, you will see a growth in the transaction, growth in the ticket size. And if you can tell the consumer when he walks into the store virtually, right, when he lands on your homepage, at that time, if you can tell him that, hey, you have access to credit and this is the credit you have, that is a game changer rather than telling him at the time of checkout, right? So some of this actually we think of how to solve for large merchants. We bring out this solution to the market, and payment is not just as something you think of as an afterthought, but it's actually a growth driver for your business, right? So that is one big aspect. Another aspect which is pretty obvious, since you mentioned about the sale season, I think the scale, right? The kind of TPS that you see, the number of transactions per second you see when the sales kick off, that is unprecedented. India was never kind of geared towards addressing that kind of online volume 3-4 years back. And I think that's where entire ecosystem is kind of struggling or trying to keep pace with that growth. And all of us has to kind of work together to co-create solution, right? So what do we do, right? So 2-3 months before the sale, and sometimes much more before that, we start going through every single part of the journey, see where the optimizations could be, and we keep on working with the merchants to do that, right? So when you work with large merchants, some of this are extremely important, right? We have to keep in mind. So I think fundamental difference, Kilan actually mentioned, we are B2, B2C company, right? So our business model is B2B, but our products are actually used by the consumers of those merchants. So you go to those merchants as their strategic partners. If you understand their consumers' pain point, you can actually add a lot of value to their business rather than just being a PG who processes the transaction, right? So that's a fundamental model in which I think we believe in PayU, and that's what we try to work with all of our partners.
So Manas, we know now what goes under the hood and obviously behind the scenes many months in advance for all these sales, which are also happening now. So I know your busy period is coming up. But just taking off from where we are speaking about, making payments seamless to that very important question, which is everybody talks about frictionless payments, everybody talks about one-click checkout, and now you're dealing with multiple payment instruments which are offering this. At the same time, regulations behind the scenes are changing, and then you have Wibmo, which has integrations with both on the issuer side, and then you're dealing with very large merchants. How does this all come together in terms of the entire ecosystem working together, and what are your own thoughts on providing a seamless payment experience, but obviously which is very secure?
Absolutely. So I think a lot of these guidelines which are already in place, which is related to either the second factor authentication or something which is going to be mandatory very soon around card storage, that makes our transaction extremely secure, right? So that I think in the long run, that is good for the industry, that we are taking care of the fraud abuse aspect of it. But what that means is that everybody in the ecosystem, whether it's players like us, the networks like Visa, MasterCard, the banks, all of us, now it's our responsibility to ensure that we keep the customer experience at par or better than what it was earlier, right? So this is where we come up with the solution that would help merchants like a Netflix or a Flipkart or Amazon to provide the same customer experience, right? So card storage is one big piece I think all of us are trying to solve for. You mentioned also frictionless payments. So the beautiful solutions that I think the ecosystem has designed, whether it's the Visas or MasterCards of the world, or what we are building with Wibmo, right? So you talk about one-click payments, right? So you do the second factor authentication, which is implicit. You don't have to enter an extra OTP, or if you have to you do it on the merchant page. You don't have to go through the redirection of going to the banks and all that, right? So orchestrating that actually takes a lot of collaboration, a lot of effort between different players who work in the backend. So whether it's a PayU, Wibmo, Visa, MasterCard, and banks together, and we bring that together, the solution to the merchant, which can be exposed to the consumers, right? So that is our thought. Again, as I mentioned, you have to be relentless, right? The industry changes, the guidelines change, but the customer experience, keeping it at par or like keep on improving it is our responsibility, and we have to all work towards that.
Absolutely, this is absolutely wonderful. And Kiran, if I can also ask you, as far as SMBs are concerned, we heard about the large merchant problems. Just on this associated topic of security. Now, how do merchants even care about the security aspect? Because if Razorpay is handling for them, how would that aspect change for you? Because you have to do it behind the scenes and almost be responsible as an outsourced arm. So how do you handle that?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think in general, India is one of the most advanced economies in terms of putting a higher onus on, end consumer security and frauds being, very, very important from that perspective. So a lot of this is actually solved by the ecosystem itself, and the role that Razorpay, PayU, all of us, as payment solution provider play is definitely smaller when it comes to domestic payments. For merchant, of course, we still need to abstract it out. So the problems are still around that even despite 2FA, there is still some amount of fraud that can happen. So how do we ensure that in this case, the dispute management is seamless for merchants? The fraud could be from two perspectives. One is actually a payment fraud where your credentials are stolen, social hacking, a lot of new customers are not used to it, where people just, call in to ask OTP, and a lot of naive users are giving it as well, new to digital, right? Another aspect is the lack of serviceability. So there are two aspects that we need to kind of help merchants on. That a consumer could raise a dispute also on lack of serviceability, not just lack of a payment fraud. And both of these are things where we need to empower the merchants to be able to tackle and respond back. If not, merchants will end up paying from their pocket. So it's still very crucial for us to be the bridge on chargeback and disputes to ensure that merchants get the right voice. So that there isn't defrauding happening from either the consumer. At the same time, we want to ensure the same from merchants as well. There are a lot of merchants who have intent to genuinely defraud end consumers. How do we ensure that we can identify and ensure that these kind of folks don't get access to digital payments? So both sides of fraud are important for players like us. At the same time, I think I'll still put it out that I think 98% problems are solved by 2FA. We are solving the last 2% of the fraud challenges in the domestic market. Fraud challenges definitely surmount for Indian merchants when they're doing exports. And that is where for them it is an added complexity. They've never dealt with it in digital payments. And that's where we again come in to simplify for them to ensure that for them the complexity is really abstracted.
Brilliant. Now, the most important question, which is what is next? So if I can ask Pratyush that question. Pratyush, what is really next? I know that from the technology point of view, there is obviously open source. There is, of course, the APIification, which is going to be great focus and priority. But what is really next for the merchant ecosystem and how you're bringing and growing this further?
Obviously after the merger with Tokopedia, right? So we have a huge captive set of users, both from the ride-hailing part of it, but also regular users in Tokopedia. But most importantly, we have almost 500,000 merchants on our platform, right? So what we see is that there are kind of three levers here, right? One is our driver partners who are, enabling the services for us, our customers, and our merchants, right? We think this forms a really nice flywheel for all three of our companies and all our geographies that we are in. But as you said, maybe the most important part of this is how do we engage our merchants better, right? For us, what we're trying to do is constantly keep on improving the merchant experience, but at the same time, provide them the opportunity to leverage these two flywheels, the consumers and the drivers as well, where it's a win-win for all three of the players here. Merchant experience for us starts from onboarding, and we just want to ensure that we understand each part of the journey and make it impeccable for every part that they're associated with us. So yeah, that's what our approach is going to be going forward.
Manas, if you could help us understand from the PU's perspective, what would be the growth strategy and drivers for future growth in digital payments, especially e-commerce, as well as, of course, hybrid models? Because Pay with Link, for example, has just taken off because it's one of those easy ones where you can convert cash to digital, especially cash on delivery. So, how do you see this space evolving?
Sure. So, Monica, I think if you look at what is happening in India right now, I think it's digitizing very fast, right? So the growth in digital payment, both from consumer side and merchants' willingness to adopt, right? That is coming up really good. I think the strategy here is a couple of things. One is now you have to start thinking about solving for those people in the tier 2, tier 3 cities and what their experience is, how they access the different merchant sites, merchant applications, right? So you think about mobile apps, you're thinking about non-app traffic, all those things becomes very critical, right? So that is on the consumer side, how do you kind of build better experience in those areas? And I think another thing that very interestingly we're noticing is that the key word that I believe for next couple of years for merchant is omnichannel, because the offline merchants are digitizing. The online merchants, I think, because the delivery is ramping up. I mean, you're accessing different parts of India now. So how do you give a experience that is seamless at par in both the channels, right? So we call it omnichannels. We don't call it an offline solution separately or an online solution separately. So we have built an omnichannel suite for our merchants, right? Whether it's a large merchant who wants to go think about the payment at the doorstep kind of an experience, or it's the offline store who wants to digitize, right? So you have to cater to both of those. And when it comes to specifically e-commerce, given the new segment that is coming up from consumer side, I'll again go back to what I referred earlier. I think affordability, financial affordability is going to be a big driver. This is what I think many of the large merchants and payment players are banking on. Access to credit has to improve. It may not just come from credit cards. So we have to look at how other debit instruments or other cardless credit, how do you kind of make it more accessible to people, drive the adoption in that. So for me, then the two keywords becomes omnichannel experience and affordability, right? So that will be where our focus is going to be. That's what I think is going to power the growth.
Now coming to Gunjan, how can you make something which is already so perfect even better? And how can payments be any more seamless than they already are for Netflix?
I love your questions, Monica, but I think for us, it's really about focusing on payment performance behind the scenes, like you say, under the hood, and continuing to make sure that they're optimized for success and that customers see as less a painful journey as possible. And in terms of it's not really crystal ball gazing, but in terms of what we plan to do is really constantly working on payments and identifying payments that form a significant part of the payments landscape that could also solve for a specific customer need. And this is specific to Netflix. I think we have ways to go with respect to innovating and driving customer seamlessness, trust, and comprehension. But I think what also lies at the heart of all of this, and in terms of what we will continue to do, is really understanding the security and convenience need to go hand in hand in order to drive adoption, and one cannot be improved upon at the cost of the other, right? So I think that really drives all of our current as well as future plans.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Gunjan, because we can't do a trade-off. I mean, it's really not negotiable anymore, and people should understand that. I think we're dealing with a lot already with payments, and this is completely non-negotiable. So thank you, Gunjan. And now coming to Khilan. Khilan, the most important aspect of how we are going to hit $5 trillion in India, and of course all over the world, with internationalization being a focus area as well. And of course, congratulations on becoming on that great amount of funding last year, and then obviously meeting goal after goal and hitting the headlines. But now the question becomes, as you are going to grow bigger, merchants are also expecting more, and you have to bring more merchants on board, because they are going to be, that digitization is actually going to help countries' economy. I'm looking at that from that particular angle. How exactly are you going to make that happen? We've spoken a lot about the challenges and what the specific needs are, but what would be your focus and growth areas for the future?
Yeah, I think, see, for us, the focus continues to be very simple. I think what has led to our success over the last 6-7 years in payments is to work with the ecosystem to co-create and launch new innovations. So we will continue to be at the forefront of innovation, working more closely with everyone in the ecosystem, be it the card networks, NPCI, regulatory bodies, banks, everyone, to co-create and launch new and innovative suites across different modes of instruments, including affordability. More important aspect, I think, is to simplify this when we expose it to merchants, especially to drive digitization, more and more new merchants. would need this in a significantly simpler fashion. And the third one is to democratize this. I think in general, access to digital payments is not very simple. For a merchant to even understand what would it take to set up his account, set up her account and, KYC regulatory aspect, and we continue to focus on that to make it as simple, as real-time and instant as possible for businesses. The last one is, I think, for the ecosystem to thrive. One, the number of merchants will end up scaling 20 to 40x over the next 5 to 10 years. And second is the end consumers will scale from possibly somewhere around 150, 200 million right now to 500, 600. And when this happens, trust will play the most important aspect. So we are going to be one of the critical parties, us and everyone in the ecosystem, to enable this trust for end consumers as well as for businesses. There is lack of trust on both sides. So I think for us, we think the simple mantra is simplification, democratization, co-create and drive innovation, and then ensure we solve for trust.
Khilan and Manas, this is from Anup. He asks whether you'd agree that regulators are increasingly looking at bringing non-bank entities at par with banking entities in terms of access to NEFT, RTGS, of course, which happened yesterday, being a big supportive step. How do you see the market adopting this? And do you have use cases on top of your mind that could potentially benefit with this easing regulation? So Manas, if you could answer that first, and then we'll go to Khilan.
Sure. So, Monica, as you said, this is something which came out, I think, pretty late yesterday evening, around 8 o'clock. A very welcome move. In fact, I think the industry overall liked this move. Very early to say which players are going to jump at it and what would be the use cases. I think the initial thought process is, I think there are a lot of PPI license holders in the market who do not get to access this kind of system now. For them, it's like really a welcome step. So my belief is that is where the adoption is going to come from initially, but we'll wait and watch. This is a little early for us to comment on this, but I think PPI is one segment that I can see clearly benefiting from this regulation.
Khilan, if you could answer that as well.
No, pretty similar thoughts. I think welcome move. I think will enable definitely more use cases to be solved. Some of them we already do solve with partners. So I think in general a welcome move will solve for a few more use cases which was slightly difficult earlier.
So Pratyush and but 20-second response, like would you as big payment players also like to participate in such systems if they were available in international countries, to be generally participative yourself and not be dependent on other players? Would that be something that you're looking at?
People buy products because of either the quality of the products or the distribution, right? What I think this does is that, as I think Khilan touched upon, this democratizes distribution everywhere, right? What that means is that now players will try to differentiate in terms of quality, which is the way it should be, rather than on how fast you have or how much funding you have raised, with all due respect to people who have raised funding, but how much funding you have raised, which gives you distribution, right? So I do think that such regulation, as Manas said, is good for the industry overall, because then you differentiate yourselves in terms of the quality of offerings, features, etc., rather than just on distribution. So yeah, it's a great thing, and I think it should be the India, as I think one of you said, has led a lot of the innovations in terms of payments which other geographies have.
I think from a payments, from a merchant payments perspective, we've always viewed India as a multi-tender market, and the fact that there are a plethora of payment services that we could choose from. And I think making these open to more players in the ecosystem just gives you that much more flexibility for merchants like us as well to go and explore either with our existing service providers in terms of limiting our integration to just with one, versus going and exploring it with others. And with regards to your question around would we be interested in doing something like this, we're an entertainment company, and we try the best to cater to our internal services in terms of trying to provide the best services to our customers. This is not what we want to focus on. We just want to focus on being able to seamlessly collect money, recur money, and really partner with the best in the ecosystem so that we can provide the best services to our customers.
Makes a lot of sense. And another question is related to this, which is again about RBI regulations and of course the availability of PPI instruments to now have issue prepaid cards, etc., etc. So I think most of you have already answered that. Now, in the interest of time, first of all, wanted to thank everyone for this very informative discussion and for, of course, taking out your time, especially in the evenings, to share this invaluable thoughts with our audience. If you're a fintech startup, banking professional, or a fintech enthusiast looking to transform your business into a digital first enterprise by 2025, I hope that this will be very helpful to you. Stay tuned for our next episode of Digirupt Finance. Until then, stay safe and keep tuning in. And thanks again for the wonderful audience and to our lovely panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.